I want you out of my house right now. Do you hear me? Get out!
Please stop. I have nowhere to go.
What would you do if medical science told you something was impossible, but your own eyes proved it was true? This billionaire CEO fired his pregnant maid after 4 doctors confirmed he was sterile. 9 months later, a DNA test exposed a medical mystery that shattered everything he believed. But here's the part that still haunts geneticists worldwide. Those twin boys carried a birthmark identical to one hidden beneath their father's collarbone, a mark so distinctive it appeared in only 3 generations of his family line. How could children who supposedly couldn't exist share a genetic signature that DNA experts called mathematically impossible? The November afternoon when 42-year-old Dominic Harrington learned he could never father children started like any other board meeting day. He'd closed a $12 million acquisition that morning. His lawyers had crushed a hostile takeover attempt before lunch. By 2 o'clock, he controlled 60% of the Eastern Seaboard's luxury real estate market. Yet sitting in Dr. Pearson's medical office 3 hours later, watching the physician's face grow increasingly grave as he reviewed test results, Dominic felt his empire crumbling from within. Your sperm count registers at 0, Mr. Harrington. Not low, not reduced. 0. Dr. Pearson's words hung between them like a death sentence. The chromosomal analysis confirms this condition existed from birth. Natural conception would require rewriting the laws of biology. The leather chair beneath Dominic seemed to absorb his weight differently now, as if gravity itself had shifted. Through the office window, Manhattan's skyline glittered with promise he'd never pass on to an heir. $3 billion in assets, 47 companies bearing his name, 0 children to inherit any of it. Run the tests again, Dominic commanded, his voice steady despite the earthquake in his chest. We've run them 4 times across 3 different laboratories. Dr. Pearson slid the reports across his desk. Yale Medical, Johns Hopkins, Cleveland Clinic. Every result confirms complete azoospermia, absence of sperm in your seminal fluid. I understand this news is devastating, but we should discuss alternatives. There are no alternatives to being a father, Dominic interrupted, standing abruptly. His 6'2" frame filled the small office, yet he'd never felt smaller. You're telling me my bloodline ends with me? Medical science has advanced considerably. Donor options, adoption services. I didn't build an empire to hand it to another man's child. The words sounded cruel even to Dominic's ears, but desperation makes monsters of proud men. He'd grown up watching his father work himself to death in Cleveland's steel mills, promising young Dominic that someday, somehow, their family name would mean something. Now that promise would die with him, buried beneath medical charts and genetic impossibilities. The confirmation came like hammer blows across December's frozen weeks. Dr. Margaret Kingston at Mount Sinai Medical Center became the second specialist to deliver the verdict. Her 30 years of reproductive medicine experience left no room for doubt. Dominic's condition stemmed from a Y chromosome deletion, present since conception. Your body never developed the cellular machinery to produce sperm, she explained, pointing to microscopic images on her monitor. This genetic variation occurs in roughly 1 in 20,000 births. Think of it like a factory missing its assembly line. The building exists, but nothing can be manufactured inside. The third opinion arrived from Boston's leading fertility expert, Dr. James Fitzgerald. He'd treated senators, tech moguls, even royalty. His assessment proved equally definitive. Mr. Harrington, I've examined tissue samples under electron microscopy. The seminiferous tubules, structures that should produce sperm, contain only support cells. No germ cells whatsoever. By January, the 4th and final specialist in Los Angeles had completed genetic sequencing that traced the anomaly through Dominic's paternal line. Dr. Lawrence Webb discovered something peculiar in the process. A rare genetic marker that created an unusual birthmark pattern, a burgundy splash shaped like a broken wing that appeared on male descendants' left collarbones. Dominic's grandfather had it. His father had it. Dominic bore the same mark, hidden beneath his Italian suits. Fascinating from a research perspective, Dr. Webb noted, photographing the birthmark for his files. This marker appears linked to your sterility gene. Nature's cruel joke, a signature you can never pass on. Veronica Harrington received the news over dinner at Le Bernardin, their usual Tuesday reservation. She'd ordered the Dover sole. He'd barely touched his Wagyu beef. Between courses, Dominic slid the medical reports across white linen. 4 doctors, same conclusion. His voice remained steady, businessman flat. I cannot give you children. Veronica's French manicured fingers traced the test results. At 38, she'd married Dominic for stability, status, and the promise of heirs to secure her position in Manhattan's social hierarchy. Love had never entered the equation. They'd been clear about that from the beginning. A merger, not a romance. Well then, she folded her napkin precisely, a gesture he'd watched her perform 1,000 times. That changes things, doesn't it? No tears, no comfort offered. Just the cool calculation of a woman recalibrating her future. Within 6 weeks, her attorney filed papers. The prenuptial agreement made division simple. She kept the Hamptons estate and $8 million. He retained everything else, including the Fifth Avenue penthouse that now echoed with a silence money couldn't fill. February brought frozen rain and empty rooms. Dominic wandered his 7,000-square-foot apartment like a ghost haunting his own life. The nursery he'd had designers plan, never built, but sketched in hopeful detail, mocked him from architectural drawings still spread across his home office desk. Tiny dimensions for a crib. Window measurements for blackout curtains. A whole future drafted in blue ink and buried in medical impossibility. His CFO called it depression. His board members whispered about succession planning. But Dominic knew the truth ran deeper. Every merger he'd orchestrated, every company he'd built from nothing. What was the point if it all died with him? His father had laid foundations with calloused hands so Dominic could build skyscrapers. Now those towers would crumble into another family's fortune, another man's legacy. Late nights he studied his reflection, searching for meaning in the burgundy birthmark above his heart. 3 generations of Harrington men had worn this same strange signature. His grandfather had passed it to his father to him. The chain would break here, severed by chromosomes that refused to cooperate with ambition. The mansion felt larger with each passing week. 22 rooms for 1 man. A dining table for 12 that served solitary meals. By March, he'd stopped coming home before midnight, preferring his office's familiar loneliness to his home's accusatory emptiness. April brought more than spring rain to the Harrington estate. Catalina Morales arrived on a Tuesday morning, pulling a single suitcase behind her, wearing a navy dress that had seen better decades but remained spotlessly clean. The employment agency had sent 3 candidates. The first 2 had gushed over the mansion's marble foyers. Catalina simply asked where she could find cleaning supplies. The previous housekeeper left everything labeled, Dominic explained, barely glancing up from quarterly reports. Your room is on the 3rd floor, West Wing. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Her English carried Guatemala's musical accent, each word carefully chosen. I'll start with the kitchen. For 2 weeks, she moved through his home like a whisper. Dominic would find fresh coffee waiting at 5:30 each morning, still steaming, though he never heard her enter his study. His shirts appeared pressed in his closet before he realized they'd been removed. Meals materialized in the refrigerator. Simple foods that somehow tasted like someone cared about the person eating them. The call about his mother came on a Thursday at 3 a.m. Heart failure. Peaceful, immediate. Dominic sat in his study afterward, unable to process that Margaret Harrington, who'd survived Cleveland's poverty, his father's death, and 40 years of factory work, had simply stopped breathing in her sleep. When he finally emerged at noon, he found Catalina arranging white orchids in the entrance hall. For your mother, she said quietly. In Guatemala, we believe white flowers help souls find their way home. You heard? Your assistant called about canceling tomorrow's meetings. I'm sorry for your loss. She didn't offer empty platitudes about his mother being in a better place. Didn't pretend to understand his grief. Just acknowledged it existed, then returned to arranging flowers with careful precision. That evening, she left a note beside a bowl of soup. Eating helps, even when nothing else does. C. May arrived with its false promises of renewal. Dominic found himself walking the estate's abandoned garden one Sunday, surveying roses his ex-wife had planted but never tended. Half had died from neglect. The survivors struggled against weeds and poor soil. They need pruning, Catalina observed from behind him. She carried garden shears and wore faded jeans, the first time he'd seen her out of uniform. May I? He nodded, watching her work with practiced efficiency. You know gardens? My grandmother grew roses in Quetzaltenango. She said they're like people. They bloom best when someone notices their struggle. Catalina cut away dead growth, revealing green shoots beneath. These varieties would never survive Guatemala's climate. Too much heat, too much rain. But here, she gestured at the temperate Connecticut landscape. Here they can become something magnificent. You miss it? Guatemala? Every day. She moved to another bush, considering its angles. But missing something doesn't mean you made the wrong choice leaving it. I send money home. My nephew attends university now, first in our family. My mother has medicine for her diabetes. Missing and purpose can exist together. Her words settled into him differently than boardroom wisdom ever had. Over the following weeks, their conversations expanded beyond pleasantries. She'd share stories while preparing dinner. Her father's coffee farm destroyed by mudslides, her brother's construction business that barely fed his children, her own education abandoned at 14 to support younger siblings. Yet you never seem bitter, Dominic observed one evening, finding her reading in the kitchen. Bitterness is a luxury for people with time to waste. She marked her page, a medical textbook, he noticed with surprise. I study when I can. Maybe one day, nursing school. Why didn't you mention this before? I could help. Because help with conditions isn't help. It's debt. Her honesty cut through his offer like her shears through dead roses. I work, I earn, I save. That's freedom. June dissolved into July, their late-night conversations becoming the only moments Dominic felt genuinely present. She'd describe Guatemala's volcanoes while he explained market volatility. He'd share his father's American dream. She'd counter with her grandmother's Mayan prayers. Two worlds colliding in a kitchen at midnight, finding common ground in their different kinds of isolation. Neither acknowledged the shifting atmosphere between them, the way he'd started coming home earlier, the way she'd linger over coffee longer than necessary. Professional boundaries held firm, even as something unnamed grew in the spaces between their words. The moment everything changed came without fanfare on a humid August evening. Dominic had returned from Tokyo exhausted, his latest acquisition complete but meaningless. He found Catalina on the terrace, studying anatomy textbooks by lamplight, mosquitoes circling overhead. The library has better lighting, he offered, loosening his tie. Libraries are for people who belong in them. She didn't look up from her diagrams of the circulatory system. I'm comfortable here. You belong anywhere you choose to be. The words hung between them, heavier than the summer air. She finally met his eyes, her expression unreadable. Do you really believe that, Mr. Harrington? Or is that something rich people say to feel generous? I believe you could run any boardroom in Manhattan if you wanted. He sat across from her, uninvited but not unwelcome. Your English, Spanish, and Kichi. Your mathematics when you calculate household budgets. You see inefficiencies I miss in my own companies. Seeing and belonging aren't the same thing. She closed her textbook carefully. Your world would eat me alive, not because I'm incapable, but because I'm inconvenient. A maid who speaks 3 languages and dreams of opening a bakery doesn't fit anyone's narrative. A bakery? For the first time in months, she smiled fully. Pan dulce, like my grandmother made, champuradas for Christmas, relenitos de plátano that make children beg for more, food that tells stories. Then why nursing? Because stories don't pay for insulin in Guatemala. The smile faded. My mother needs $300 monthly for medication. That's more than most people earn in Quetzaltenango in 3 months. Without thinking, Dominic reached across the table, his hand covering hers. She didn't pull away. The touch lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4, before professional distance reasserted itself. But those seconds carved a fault line through everything they'd carefully maintained. September arrived with its false autumn, and with it, a shift neither could deny. Dominic canceled meetings he'd never missed before. The Singapore conference call that conflicted with her evening study session, rescheduled. The charity gala requiring his presence, he sent regrets. His board members noticed. His competitors whispered. But for the first time since his diagnosis, Dominic felt purposeful beyond profit margins. They developed a rhythm of careful boundaries. She'd prepare dinner. He'd help serve it, their conversations flowing across his massive dining table. He'd explain leveraged buyouts while she kneaded dough for morning pastries. She taught him quiche phrases. He reviewed her anatomy flashcards. Professional distance maintained in daylight, dissolved after dark. October brought the first kiss, unexpected and inevitable. She'd been describing her grandmother's funeral traditions when tears surprised them both. Grief she'd held back for 2 years, suddenly overwhelming her careful composure. He'd meant to offer a handkerchief. Instead, he held her, and when she looked up, gratitude shifted into something else entirely. "This is impossible," she whispered against his shoulder afterward. "Everything about my life has become impossible," he replied. "This is the only part that makes sense." November passed in stolen moments, a touch while passing in hallways. Conversations that stretched until dawn. She moved through his days like oxygen, invisible but essential. His household staff, paid well for discretion, said nothing about Mr. Harrington's sudden interest in kitchen renovations or his presence during activities he'd previously ignored. But secrets in Manhattan have short lifespans. By December, gossip columnists had begun asking questions. Why had Dominic Harrington, the city's most eligible divorced billionaire, declined every social invitation for months? Who was the woman spotted at his estate's windows? His publicist deflected inquiries, but curiosity grew with each refusal to comment. "They'll destroy you if they find out," Catalina warned one evening, her medical textbook abandoned for reality's harsher lessons. "Rich man, poor immigrant. They'll paint me as a gold digger and you as a fool." "Let them try." His confidence rang hollow, though. He knew she was right. The same social circles that celebrated his mergers would crucify his choice of partner. The board members who praised his vision would question his judgment. Everything he'd built relied on reputation, and reputation bowed to perception. Still, when she smiled at him across his kitchen, flour dusting her cheeks from attempted croissants, the world's opinion seemed negotiable. Love had made him reckless in ways sterility had made him desperate. January's blizzard had trapped them inside for 3 days, when Catalina finally spoke the words that would shatter everything. She stood in his study doorway at 9 p.m., hands pressed against her stomach, her whole body trembling like the windows against the storm. "Dominic, I need to tell you something." He glanced up from acquisition papers, immediately noting her pallor. "You're ill? Should I call Dr. Pearson?" "No, I'm not sick." She stepped inside, closing the door with deliberate care. "I'm pregnant." The grandfather clock in the corner ticked 5 times before he processed her words. The pen in his hand dropped, rolling across contracts worth millions, leaving ink trails like blood across paper. "That's not possible. I've taken 4 tests, different brands, all positive." Her voice remained steady despite her shaking hands. "I went to a clinic in Hartford last week. They confirmed it. 8 weeks. Dominic stood so abruptly his chair crashed backward. 8 weeks? 8 weeks of lying to my face? I wasn't lying. I was trying to understand. Understand what? How to explain your infidelity? The words erupted from somewhere primal, deeper than thought. 4 doctors, 4 separate specialists, confirmed I cannot father children. Cannot. Not unlikely. Not improbable. Impossible. I haven't been with anyone else. Tears ran down her face now, but she didn't move to wipe them. Only you. For months, only you. Stop! He grabbed the medical reports from his desk drawer, slamming them down between them. Yale, Johns Hopkins, Mount Sinai, UCLA. Read them yourself. 0 sperm count. 0. Do you understand what that means? It means you're carrying another man's child while standing in my home, lying to my face. I'm not lying. Who was it? Someone from your past? A boyfriend in Hartford? Or did you plan this from the beginning? His voice had turned corporate cold, the tone he used for hostile takeovers. Find a desperate, sterile billionaire. Get close. Get pregnant by someone else. Claim it's mine. Classic entrapment. Catalina's face transformed from hurt to fury. You think I planned this? You think I wanted to fall in love with someone who sees me as staff 6 days a week and a person only when it suits him? Love, he laughed, bitter and sharp. Is that what you're calling it? This manipulation? I'm calling it what it was before you decided I'm a liar. She pulled ultrasound images from her pocket, hands steady now despite everything. Look at them. Twins. Two babies who will never know their father because he's too proud to consider that maybe, just maybe, doctors can be wrong. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody saw coming. Dominic didn't look at the images. Couldn't. Instead, he reached for his phone, speed dialing his attorney. Harrison, I need you here within the hour. Bring a full NDA package and severance documentation. Dominic, please. You have 1 hour to pack. He turned his back to her, staring out at the blizzard that mirrored his internal storm. Harrison will provide 6 months severance and medical coverage through the pregnancy. In exchange, you'll sign papers agreeing to no further contact, no paternity claims, no media statements, nothing. You're throwing me out? Tonight? In this storm? I'm being generous. Another man might call the police, claim theft, make your life impossible. He faced her again, his expression carved from ice. Take the money, go back to Guatemala. Raise your children there. Tell them whatever story helps you sleep. She stood straighter, dignity wrapping around her like armor. I'll leave, but not because you're threatening me, because the man I thought I knew doesn't exist. He was just another story I told myself. Catalina left the ultrasound images on his desk, two blurry shapes that he wouldn't look at for weeks. She packed in 45 minutes, refusing his driver, calling her own taxi despite the storm. Harrison arrived as she descended the stairs, legal documents ready, pen extended. She signed without reading, without fighting, without another word to Dominic. The only sound was wet ink on paper and wind howling against windows. The taxi's red lights disappeared into white nothing, taking with it the only person who'd made him feel human since his diagnosis. Dominic spent the rest of the night constructing justifications like walls. The medical evidence was irrefutable. 4 specialists couldn't all be wrong. She'd admitted to past relationships in Guatemala. The timing was too convenient, pregnant just as gossip columnists started asking questions. His wealth made him a target. He'd been lonely, vulnerable, foolish, but not anymore. By morning, he'd convinced himself completely. The study had been professionally cleaned, her presence erased from his home like it had never existed. Only the ultrasound images remained, locked in his desk drawer, 2 blurry accusations he refused to acknowledge. His lawyers confirmed the signed agreements. His accountant processed the severance payment. His life returned to its sterile routine, absent of morning coffee that appeared like magic and conversations that lasted until dawn. February dissolved into hostile takeovers and pre-dawn flights to London. Dominic acquired 3 companies in 6 weeks, each deal more aggressive than the last. His lawyers whispered concerns about due diligence. His CFO questioned the valuations. But movement meant not thinking, and not thinking meant not remembering the way Catalina had stood in his doorway, her hands protective over her stomach. March brought insomnia that no medication could touch. 3 a.m. became his haunting hour, when defensive walls crumbled and questions crept through. The twins would be growing now, moving, their heartbeats visible on monitors he'd never see. He'd pull up medical journals on his tablet, reading about spontaneous genetic mutations, chimeric DNA, the 1 in 10 million cases where the impossible became possible. Then sunrise would arrive, and with it, the armor of absolute certainty that 4 specialists couldn't be wrong. His executive assistant, Patricia, watched him deteriorate with professional concern. Mr. Harrington, you've lost considerable weight. Should I schedule the Tokyo meeting for next week instead of video conference? He didn't look up from spreadsheets that blurred together. I'll fly out Sunday. April meant cherry blossoms in Japan and another acquisition that felt like swallowing sand. His phone rang during the closing dinner, an unknown Hartford number he almost ignored. But something, instinct, exhaustion, or that 3 a.m. vulnerability, made him answer. Mr. Harrington? An unfamiliar female voice, professionally warm. This is Dr. Sophia from Hartford General Hospital. You're listed as an emergency contact for Catalina Morales. His chopsticks clattered against porcelain. Is she? What happened? Ms. Morales delivered twins this morning, a boy and girl. The delivery was complicated but successful. She's recovering well. Twins. The word felt foreign in his mouth. Sir, are you still there? Yes, Thank you for informing me. Ms. Morales wanted you to know that both babies have a distinctive birthmark. She said you'd understand what that meant. The line went dead before Dominic could respond. He stood in the middle of Tokyo's most exclusive restaurant, phone pressed against his ear as the world tilted off its axis. The birthmark, the burgundy splash shaped like a broken wing that marked Harrington men for generations. The genetic signature Dr. Webb had photographed had called nature's cruel joke, a signature you can never pass on. Except Catalina couldn't have known about it. He'd never shown her, never mentioned it. The mark hid beneath his clothing, a secret between himself and doctors bound by confidentiality agreements. His hands shook as he called Harrison. I need you to arrange something quietly. A DNA test, the most accurate available. Sir, I thought we'd resolved. Just arrange it. May arrived with DNA collection kits and legal frameworks that felt like admitting defeat. Dominic provided samples, blood, hair, saliva, with the efficiency of a man dismantling his own certainty. The lab promised results within 2 weeks. He spent those 14 days oscillating between fury at false hope and terror at its opposite. Hartford General's maternity ward smelled of antiseptic and new beginnings. Dominic arrived at 7 p.m., after visiting hours, his influence opening doors that should have remained closed. Catalina sat beside 2 clear bassinets, her back straight despite obvious exhaustion. She didn't look up when he entered. You came. Her voice held neither warmth nor anger, just acknowledgement. You called the hospital, mentioned the birthmark. I thought you should know your son has it. Behind his left shoulder, exactly like yours. She finally met his eyes, her gaze steady. The daughter has your mother's eyes. That particular shade of green that looks gray in certain light. Dominic approached slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter this fragile truce. The babies slept, wrapped in hospital blankets, one pink, one blue. The boy's face carried impossible familiarity, a mirror reaching through time. The girl's delicate features held Margaret Harrington's stubborn chin. I've arranged for DNA testing, he said quietly, with your permission. Permission? Catalina's laugh held broken edges. 4 months ago, you threw me into a blizzard. Now you ask permission? I was wrong to... Stop. We're not doing this here. Not in front of them. She stood, positioning herself between Dominic and the bassinets. You want your test? Fine. But understand something. These results won't change anything between us. They're for you, for your conscience, not for me. The testing team arrived within an hour, discreet professionals who collected samples with practiced efficiency, cheek swabs from the twins, so gentle neither baby stirred. Blood from Dominic, drawn into multiple vials for redundancy. The lead technician, Dr. Morgan, seemed unusually thorough. We'll run standard paternity markers first, she explained, labeling samples with meticulous care. But given the medical history you've provided, I'm recommending extended genetic screening. Sometimes unusual cases require deeper investigation. Whatever it takes, Dominic agreed. Catalina watched silently, holding their daughter, Lucia, she'd named her. Their son Gabriel remained sleeping, unaware his very existence challenged medical certainty. 2 weeks stretched like pulled glass, each day longer than the previous. Dominic threw himself into work, but found concentration impossible. He'd catch himself staring at the ultrasound images Catalina had left behind. Those blurry shapes now transformed into actual humans with his mother's eyes and his family's genetic signature. Patricia rescheduled his meetings without being asked. Harrison fielded calls Dominic couldn't face. Even his competitors noticed something had shifted. The shark had lost his appetite for blood. Dr. Morgan called on day 15, her voice carrying unusual excitement. Mr. Harrington, I need you to come to my office immediately. Bring your medical records from the fertility specialists. Just tell me the results. This requires explanation in person. Trust me, you'll want to be sitting down. Her office at the Genetic Research Center felt more like a university classroom than a medical facility. Charts covered every wall, DNA sequences projected on screens. Dr. Morgan pulled up multiple displays, her enthusiasm barely contained. First, the simple answer. You are definitely the biological father. The match is indisputable. She clicked to another screen. But that's where simple ends. Your case represents something I've only read about in journals. You're a chimera. A what? In the womb, you absorbed a twin. It happens more often than people realize. 1 in 8 pregnancies starts as multiples, but only 1 in 70 results in twin births. The absorbed twin's DNA didn't disappear. It merged with yours, creating a single person with 2 distinct genetic profiles. Dominic stared at the screen showing double helix patterns he couldn't interpret. That's science fiction. It's documented medical fact. Rare, but real. Dr. Morgan pulled up a case study from Boston. This woman discovered she wasn't genetically her children's mother despite giving birth to them. Her absorbed twins' DNA had colonized her reproductive organs. In your case, the 4 specialists tested DNA from your blood and skin cells, which showed sterility markers. But your reproductive cells carry your absorbed twins' genetic profile, which is perfectly fertile. You're saying I've been 2 people this entire time? Genetically speaking, yes. It explains everything. Why standard fertility tests showed 0 sperm count, why the medical evidence seemed irrefutable, and why you still fathered children. She displayed a new chart showing comparative DNA. Look here, Gabriel and Lucia match both your genetic profiles. They're inheriting from all their biological grandparents through you, creating an unusually rich genetic mixture. Imagine discovering you've been 2 people your entire life. The birthmark, Dominic said suddenly. My absorbed twin had it too? Genetic markers like birthmarks often persist through chimerism. Your son inherited it from the twin DNA that created him. Dr. Morgan leaned forward, her expression serious now. Mr. Harrington, this discovery has implications beyond paternity. We should conduct full medical screening to understand which organs carry which DNA. It could affect future medical treatment, medication responses, even disease susceptibility. But Dominic wasn't thinking about future medical care. He was thinking about Catalina, standing in his study while snow raged outside, telling him the truth while he called her a liar. About Gabriel and Lucia, growing inside her while she fled into that storm. About 4 months of their lives he'd missed because he'd trusted incomplete science over complete faith. I need these results documented, he said finally. Every test, every confirmation. Legal documentation that no court could challenge. Planning custody arrangements? Planning an apology that could never be enough. The Hartford apartment building stood like an accusation. Peeling paint, broken buzzer system, stairs that groaned under Wells' unfamiliar footsteps. Dominic climbed to the 4th floor, each step heavier than hostile takeover negotiations. Behind door 4B, he heard babies crying and Catalina singing softly in Kichi, the lullaby cutting through thin walls. His knock felt inadequate against the weight of 4 months' absence. The singing stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened just enough for him to see her face, thinner now, exhaustion painting shadows beneath her eyes. The test came back, he said. I know, Dr. Morgan called. She didn't open the door wider. Congratulations on discovering what I already told you. May I come in? Why? To evaluate whether your children deserve better? To calculate how much money will make this disappear? Her grip on the door tightened. Or did you bring more lawyers? I brought myself, nothing else. She studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. The apartment was clean but cramped. 1 bedroom, kitchen barely large enough for 1 person, a living room where 2 bassinets dominated the space. A medical textbook lay open on a card table beside formula bottles. The walls held no pictures except a single ultrasound image, the one she'd left on his desk. Gabriel fussed in his bassinet, tiny fists waving at injustices only he understood. Catalina lifted him with practiced ease, his cries softening against her shoulder. That's when Dominic saw it, the birthmark peeking above the baby's collar, burgundy against new skin. He looks like you, she said quietly. Same stubborn expression when he's hungry. Catalina, Lucia has your mother's nose. You probably didn't notice that at the hospital. She shifted Gabriel, revealing more of the birthmark. Did Dr. Morgan explain the chimerism? How you've been walking around as 2 people without knowing it? She explained everything, including how wrong I was. Wrong? Her laugh held no humor. You accused me of entrapment, of planning pregnancy with another man to steal your money. You threw me out during a blizzard while I carried your children. Wrong doesn't begin to cover it. Lucia began crying, harmony to her brother's melody. Dominic moved toward the bassinet instinctively, then stopped. May I? Catalina watched him like a hawk studies a threat. Do you even know how to hold a baby? No, but I want to learn. She considered this, then nodded. Support her head. Always support the head. Dominic lifted his daughter with terrified gentleness. Lucia weighed nothing and everything, her green-gray eyes, his mother's eyes, studying him with newborn intensity. Her crying stopped, replaced by curious silence. His hands, so steady signing billion-dollar deals, trembled, holding 6 pounds of consequence. I dream about that night, he said. Lucia cradled against his chest. You standing in the snow, begging me to listen. I wake up trying to change it, to be different, to be someone who trusted love over medical reports. Dreams don't pay rent or buy formula. Catalina's voice carried no sympathy. I've been alone for 4 months, not just physically, emotionally, financially, entirely. While you were buying companies, I was choosing between groceries and prenatal vitamins. While you were flying to Tokyo, I was in labor for 16 hours, alone except for nurses who kept asking about the father. Tell me what you need. Anything. I don't want your money. Then what? She looked at him holding Lucia, at Gabriel peaceful against her shoulder, at the life cramped into inadequate space. I want you to earn this. Not buy it, not negotiate it, earn it. Show up every day. Change diapers at 3 a.m. Learn their different cries. Be present for doctor appointments and first smiles and all the mundane moments between. I'll move you somewhere safer. No, you'll come here. You'll see how we live, how most people live. If you want to be their father, you'll learn what that means without your wealth as a cushion. She shifted Gabriel, meeting Dominic's eyes directly. And you'll go to therapy. Real therapy, not corporate coaching. You need to understand why you chose cruelty over trust, or you'll do it again. Done? All of it. This isn't a contract negotiation, Dominic. I'm not agreeing to anything. I'm offering you a chance to prove you're more than your bank account and medical reports. One chance. Gabriel reached out from his mother's arms, tiny fingers grasping air. Dominic shifted Lucia carefully, extending his free hand to his son. Gabriel grabbed his father's finger with surprising strength, holding on like an anchor. Their middle names are both Harrington, Catalina said softly. I wanted them to know where they came from, even if they never knew you. But maybe they can know both. Standing in that cramped apartment, holding his daughter while his son gripped his finger, Dominic felt the hostile takeover of his heart complete. Love had won, despite his best efforts to kill it. 3 weeks into their fragile arrangement, Dominic arrived at the Hartford apartment carrying legal documents instead of diapers. Catalina looked up from feeding Lucia, immediately wary. More papers to sign? Different kind. He set them on the card table, careful not to disturb the medical textbooks she'd been studying. Birth certificate amendments. I want them to have my name. They already have your name. The middle? No, Reyes Harrington. Both surnames, hyphenated. He sat on the floor beside Gabriel's bouncer, a position that would have been unthinkable 5 months ago. Your strength carried them. My DNA might have created them, but your courage brought them here. Catalina paused mid-feeding. The media will destroy you. Billionaire with secret children, the housekeeper story. They'll make it a scandal. Let them. He wound up Gabriel's mobile, watching his son track the movement with focused intensity. Patricia already fielded 17 calls this week. The Hartford Gazette has photographers outside my office. Someone leaked that I've been visiting this address daily. And that doesn't concern you? What concerns me is Gabriel's fever last Tuesday that you handled alone because I was in a board meeting. What concerns me is Lucia preferring your voice to mine because I missed too many bedtimes. He met her gaze directly. The media created a narrative about me for years. Cold, sterile, untouchable. Let them write a new one. She shifted Lucia to her shoulder, patting her back with practiced rhythm. My mother used to say something in Quichua. The tree that bends in the storm stays rooted while the rigid one breaks. Meaning, you've been rigid your whole life, Dominic. Bending isn't just uncomfortable for you, it's foreign. These past weeks, watching you struggle with diaper tabs and formula measurements, seeing you panic when they cry, that's you learning to bend. But storms don't stop coming. Gabriel started fussing, the particular whine that preceded real crying. Dominic lifted him without hesitation now, though his movements still carried millionaire caution. His son settled against his shoulder, tiny fingers gripping expensive fabric never meant for baby drool. The real storm already happened, Dominic said quietly. That January night when I chose fear over faith. Everything else is just weather. But the real miracle wasn't the DNA. It was what happened next. Catalina stood, placing Lucia in her bassinet with the gentle precision of someone who'd learned through repetitive nights. You show up. Every day you show up. 4 a.m. feedings, pediatrician appointments, grocery runs when we're out of wipes. No assistance, no delegation, just you. That's not a miracle, that's minimum. For most people, yes. For you? She gestured at his Armani suit, now decorated with Gabriel's spit-up. For someone who scheduled feelings into quarterly reviews, it's revolutionary. The therapy sessions Dr. Martinez conducted twice weekly had excavated things Dominic had buried beneath acquisitions and spreadsheets. Trust issues rooted in Margaret Harrington's conditional affection, fear disguised as logic, the way he'd weaponized wealth to avoid vulnerability. Each session felt like surgery without anesthesia, necessary but brutal. I'm trying to become someone they won't be ashamed of, he admitted, Gabriel drowsing against his neck. Someone who chose their mother, not who exiled her. You can't rewrite that night, Dominic. No, but I can write tomorrow differently. And the day after. He looked at the birth certificate amendments Reyes Harrington typed in official font, starting with honoring where they come from, both sides. Catalina picked up the papers, reading through legal language with the focus she brought to her medical studies. She'd enrolled in online pre-med courses, working toward the dreams she'd deferred for survival. Dominic had offered to pay. She'd refused, taking out student loans instead. Independence mattered more than ease. If we do this, she said finally, we do it honestly. No hiding their story. No pretty lies about how we met or why you weren't there initially. They deserve truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Agreed. She signed the papers with deliberate strokes. Gabriel Harrington Reyes, Lucia Harrington Reyes. The names looked balanced on paper. 2 histories joining without erasing either. Outside, Hartford traffic created its usual symphony. Inside, 2 babies slept, while their parents navigated the harder task of rebuilding what winter had broken. Trust grew slowly, measured in midnight bottles and shared exhaustion, in small surrenders and smaller victories. 6 months later, Dominic sat in the Hartford apartment at 3 a.m., both twins awake with summer colds. Lucia fussed against his chest while Gabriel fought sleep in Catalina's arms. The space still felt cramped, though he'd convinced her to accept a few safety improvements. New locks, working heat, windows that actually sealed. She'd drawn the line at moving, insisting the children know their beginnings. They're synchronizing again, Catalina observed as both babies yawned in perfect unison, tiny mouths forming identical O's. It happened often, these moments of mirror-like behavior that suggested connection beyond simple genetics. Dr. Morgan called it twin consciousness, though Dominic suspected she invented the term to explain what science couldn't quite grasp. Like his own chimeric existence, some truths lived outside textbooks. The impossible he'd learned was often just the improbable wearing disguise. His phone buzzed with London market updates he no longer checked obsessively. The company ran smoothly under Patricia's expanded oversight, while he spent nights learning the difference between hungry cries and tired cries, between Gabriel's quick temper and Lucia's patient determination. He'd become fluent in a language spreadsheets never taught, the dialect of showing up. Harrison called today, Catalina mentioned, adjusting Gabriel's position. The board wants to know when you're returning full-time. The shareholders had grown restless these past months, watching their corporate shark become something unrecognizable. A father who prioritized pediatrician appointments over merger meetings. Stock prices remained stable, but stability wasn't what they'd signed up for under Dominic Harrington's reign. What did you tell him? That pride and prejudice both carry a price. They could accept your new priorities or find someone else. Dominic looked at her, this woman who'd stood in his marble foyer pregnant with his children while he called her a liar. She'd survived his cruelty, Hartford winters, single motherhood, and media scrutiny without breaking. Now she defended his transformation against the very empire he'd built. They'll threaten a vote of no confidence. Let them. She met his gaze steadily. You don't need them now. Gabriel finally surrendered to exhaustion, his breathing evening out. Lucia followed moments later, her tiny fist relaxing against Dominic's shirt. They moved in practiced synchronization now, settling the twins in their bassinets with barely a whisper between them. This was their rhythm, not the passionate chaos of early romance, but something deeper, trust rebuilt grain by grain, measured in diaper changes and doctor visits, in therapy sessions where Dominic learned to feel without spreadsheets as shields. The DNA test didn't just reveal paternity, Catalina said quietly, standing beside him as they watched their children sleep. It exposed the truth about second chances. She was right. The test had shattered more than medical certainty. It had broken open the vault where he'd locked away vulnerability, faith, and the dangerous possibility of being wrong. In that breaking, something new had grown. Not perfect, not unmarked by winter's scars, but real. Family built on faith, not certainty. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. Media scrutiny wouldn't fade. The board would demand explanations. The twins would grow, ask questions, deserve answers about the months their father missed. But tonight, in this cramped apartment, with sirens wailing outside and babies breathing in synchronized peace, they had enough. This story reminds us that medical miracles happen every day. What impossible thing in your life deserves a second look? Subscribe for more incredible stories of families defying the odds. Sometimes love wasn't about being right. Sometimes it was about being willing to be wrong.